The rain poured relentlessly on the quiet countryside as Alex sat by the crackling fire in his small farmhouse. The storm had rolled in suddenly, painting the night sky with flashes of lightning. It was a night meant for staying indoors, but fate had other plans. A loud knock on the door startled Alex. He wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. Grabbing a flashlight, he cautiously approached the door. Who could it be? He muttered to himself. As he opened it, his breath caught in his throat. Standing there was a tall, alien figure, barely upright, and drenched from head to toe. Her skin shimmered faintly under the light, a silvery hue that almost looked metallic. She wore what looked like a torn battle suit, its edges charred and blood-stained. Her eyes, glowing faintly purple, locked onto Alex with desperation. "Help," she whispered before collapsing at his feet. Alex froze for a moment, his mind racing. An alien. On his porch. This wasn't something he'd ever prepared for. But seeing her lifeless form sprawled on the ground triggered his instincts. He couldn't just leave her there, no matter how bizarre the situation was. Straining with effort, Alex lifted her surprisingly heavy body and carried her inside. He laid her carefully on the couch near the fire, noting the deep gashes across her arms and torso. Her breathing was shallow, her body trembling. She was clearly in bad shape. Grabbing his first aid kit, Alex knelt beside her. "I hope this works for whatever you are," he said softly, pulling out antiseptic and bandages. As he worked, he couldn't help but marvel at the intricate patterns on her skin, almost like natural tattoos, etched with precision. They glowed faintly as if reacting to his touch. The alien stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "You, human," she rasped. Her voice was weak, but carried an edge of authority. "They will come. Danger. Who will come?" Alex asked, confused but trying to keep her calm. "You need to rest." She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength, her glowing eyes boring into his. "Promise, you will not let them take me." Alex hesitated. He didn't understand what was happening, but the fear in her voice was real. "I promise," he said firmly. Her grip loosened, and she closed her eyes again, slipping back into unconsciousness. Alex sighed, glancing at the window where the storm raged on. Lightning illuminated the sky, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw something moving in the distance, shadows that didn't belong to trees. Setting down the first aid kit, he locked the door and drew the curtains. Whatever trouble she was running from, it seemed to have followed her here. And now, it was at his doorstep. For the first time in his quiet, simple life, Alex felt the weight of something far bigger than himself. He didn't know who she was or why she had come to him, but one thing was certain: his life was about to change forever. Morning broke slowly, the storm finally calming after a relentless night. Alex sat by the alien woman's side, sipping a mug of coffee, his mind filled with questions. She was still unconscious, her breathing steady but shallow. The glowing patterns on her skin faintly pulsed, a mesmerizing rhythm that hinted at something beyond human understanding. As the first rays of sunlight streamed through the window, the alien stirred. Her eyes flickered open, glowing purple irises locking onto Alex. He instinctively leaned back, unsure if she was a threat now that she was awake. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse but commanding. "My house," Alex replied, setting down his mug. "You collapsed on my porch last night. You were in bad shape, so I brought you in." She frowned, her expression a mixture of confusion and pain. "You helped me." Alex nodded. "Yeah. What else was I supposed to do? Leave you in the rain?" The alien seemed to ponder this, her gaze softening slightly. "Humans are strange." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Strange," says the glowing alien warrior on my couch. She tilted her head, clearly not understanding his sarcasm. "I am Kilira," she said after a pause, "a soldier of the Voltran Empire." Alex leaned forward, curious. Voltran Empire. Never heard of it. Are you from another planet? Yes, Kilara replied, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Far from here. I was on a mission when I was betrayed. Betrayed? Alex asked, his brow furrowing. Kilara nodded, her jaw tightening. My squad was sent to retrieve a powerful artifact from a rival faction. But my commander, he set me up. He left me to die. She hesitated, her glowing eyes filled with anger and sadness. I barely escaped with my life, but they're hunting me now. I sought refuge on this planet, thinking it was hidden enough to evade them. Alex rubbed the back of his neck, trying to process her words. So, you're saying someone's after you, and they might come here. Kilara sat up slowly, wincing as she clutched her side. Yes, they won't stop until I'm dead. I carry information that could expose their corruption. It's why they want me silenced. Alex stood, pacing the room. Great, so now I've got alien mercenaries hunting me too. This keeps getting better. Kilara watched him, her expression unreadable. You could have left me outside. Let them take me. Why didn't you? Alex stopped pacing, meeting her gaze. Because that's not what we do. Not here. You needed help, and I wasn't going to just stand by and do nothing. For a moment, Kilara said nothing, her glowing eyes studying him. Your kindness is unexpected. Yeah, well, you're welcome, Alex said with a sigh. But if we're going to get through this, we'll need a plan. What are we up against? Kilara's eyes darkened. The worst kind of enemies, ones with no mercy. Outside, the faint hum of distant engines broke the silence. The distant hum grew louder as Alex peeked out the window, his heart pounding. In the distance, he could see faint silhouettes, shadows that didn't belong to the morning trees. Kilara, still weak, sat up straighter, her warrior instincts kicking in despite her injuries. They found me, she muttered, her voice tense. Alex closed the curtains and turned to her. What do they want? Just you, or will they destroy everything in their path? They want me alive. For now, Kilara replied. But if you interfere, they won't hesitate to kill you. Alex's mind raced. He didn't sign up for this, but now that the danger was here, he couldn't turn back. Then we need to make sure they don't get what they want. Can you fight? Kilara shook her head, frustration evident on her face. Not in my current condition. My strength hasn't fully returned, and my weapons are gone. Alex rubbed his temples. All right, we'll have to get creative. She tilted her head, studying him. Creative? What do you mean? You'll see, Alex said, grabbing a toolkit from the corner of the room. He moved quickly, pulling out wires, batteries, and old tools. Kilara watched in fascination as he started piecing together makeshift traps and distractions using whatever he could find. You're improvising, Kilara said, a note of admiration in her voice. Humans, you adapt so quickly. Alex shrugged, focused on his work. It's not much, but it'll slow them down. Hopefully, long enough for us to figure something out. Kilara's gaze softened. Your instincts are remarkable. You act without hesitation, even when you're afraid. Alex paused, glancing at her. You think I'm not scared? Those things out there, whatever they are, probably have weapons and tech way beyond anything I've ever seen. But I've got one advantage they don't. And what is that? Kilara asked. This is my home, Alex said with a smirk. I know every inch of this place, every hiding spot, every weak point. If they want to get in, they're going to regret it. Kilara leaned back, a small smile playing on her lips. You're braver than I expected. Or just stubborn, Alex replied, setting up a tripwire near the back door. Either way, we're not going down without a fight. Outside, the humming noise stopped. The mercenaries were close now, moving through the woods with precision. Kilara closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing. She needed to conserve her strength, but she couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. Alex didn't deserve this danger. He had every right to throw her out, but instead, He chose to protect her. As Alex finished setting up the last trap, he turned to her. If this goes south, there's a hidden path behind the barn. It'll lead you to the river. You can escape from there. Kalira frowned. And leave you here alone? No. I owe you my life, human. I will not abandon you. Alex opened his mouth to protest, but a sudden loud crash outside silenced him. The enemy had arrived. The crash outside sent a shiver down Alex's spine. He grabbed the old hunting rifle from the wall, his hand shaking slightly as he loaded it. Kalira struggled to stand, leaning against the couch for support. Her glowing eyes hardened with determination. "They're here," she said quietly, her voice steadied despite her weakened state. Alex nodded, peeking out the window. Shadows moved between the trees, their figures tall and sleek, their weapons glowing with an otherworldly light. "How many?" he asked, trying to sound calm. Kalira closed her eyes briefly, focusing. 3. Skilled mercenaries. They'll split up to flank us." "Great," Alex muttered. 3 against 1 injured alien and a farmer with a gun. Fantastic odds. She glanced at him, a flicker of amusement in her stern expression. "You forget your traps. They may be primitive, but they'll buy us time." Alex smirked despite the tension. "Glad you approve. Let's see how they like a little human ingenuity." The first mercenary approached cautiously, his glowing visor scanning the area. As he stepped onto the porch, Alex's tripwire triggered. A bucket filled with nails and broken glass swung down, smashing into the alien's helmet. The mercenary stumbled back, disoriented, and Alex quickly fired a shot at his weapon, sending it flying into the mud. "That's one," Alex called out, adrenaline coursing through him. The second mercenary circled toward the back door, moving silently. But as he pushed the door open, a makeshift contraption of wires and batteries sparked, sending an electric shock through his armor. He roared in pain, staggering backward. Kalira, despite her injuries, grabbed a piece of wood from the firewood stack and swung it with precision, knocking the alien unconscious. She leaned against the wall, panting. 2 down. Alex ran to check on her. "You okay?" She nodded. "I've endured worse." The third mercenary, larger and faster than the others, stormed through the front window, shattering glass everywhere. Alex barely had time to react before the alien knocked the rifle from his hands and pinned him against the wall. "You shouldn't have interfered, human," the mercenary growled, his voice distorted by his helmet. Alex struggled, but the alien's strength was overwhelming. Just as the mercenary raised a blade-like weapon, Kalira lunged forward, her warrior instincts taking over. She tackled the alien, her glowing patterns flaring brightly. Despite her weakened state, she fought fiercely, landing blow after blow with an intensity that left Alex in awe. Finally, Kalira delivered a crushing strike to the alien's helmet, cracking it open. The mercenary slumped to the ground, unconscious. She stood over him, breathing heavily, her silver skin shimmering with sweat. Alex picked up his rifle, his hand still trembling. "You saved me." Kalira looked at him, her expression unreadable. "We saved each other." Outside, the woods grew quiet again, but Alex knew it wasn't over. The mercenaries were defeated for now, but Kalira's enemies wouldn't stop so easily. "We need to move," she said. "More will come." Alex nodded, glancing at the broken window. "Then we'd better be ready." The battle was over, but the tension remained thick in the air. Alex stood by the broken window, scanning the woods for any signs of movement. The storm had passed, but the danger was far from over. Kalira, still catching her breath, wiped the sweat from her forehead, her glowing eyes narrowing as she surveyed the wreckage around them. "They'll send more," she said quietly. "I can feel their presence." Alex turned to her, his mind racing. The mercenaries had been skilled, but they were nothing compared to the unknown forces she was running from. "How many more?" he asked, trying to sound calm. She looked at him, her gaze softened but heavy with the weight of her past. As many as it takes. They won't stop until I'm dead. Alex couldn't shake the feeling of dread hanging over him. He had no idea what he was dealing with, but one thing was clear. His life was no longer his own. He had made a choice, and now there was no going back. He was in this with Kalira. What exactly are they after? He asked. Why do they want you so badly? Kalira took a deep breath, her eyes distant as she gathered her thoughts. I was part of a covert mission. We were sent to retrieve a device, an ancient artifact that could shift the balance of power within my empire. But my commander betrayed us. He set me up to take the fall. Alex's heart sank. Betrayal. That's a heavy price to pay. Her eyes flickered with pain, but she didn't look away. It's worse than you think. The artifact I was sent to retrieve isn't just any weapon. It's a piece of technology that could change the fate of entire civilizations. The enemy wants it for themselves. And if they get it, they'll use it to conquer, right? Alex finished for her, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Kalira nodded. Yes, and I'm the only one who knows where it is. Alex stood there, processing the weight of her words. The quiet farm life he'd grown used to was now a distant memory. He had no choice but to help her. Kalira wasn't just some alien warrior. She was a key player in a much larger game, and her enemies were determined to take her down at any cost. I'm not going to let them take you, Alex said, his voice firm. We'll figure this out. Together. Kalira studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. You've proven yourself. Not many would risk their lives for a stranger, especially an alien. Alex shrugged. I don't know what you expect from me, Kalira, but I'm not the kind of guy who walks away from someone who needs help. Kalira looked down at her hands, the glowing tattoos on her skin pulsing faintly. I owe you more than I can ever repay. Alex stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. No need for that. We're in this together. For the first time since meeting her, Kalira allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. It wasn't much, but it was enough to let Alex know that she had placed her trust in him. The quiet moment was broken by a sudden noise outside. Footsteps. More mercenaries. Alex's heart raced. We need to move, Kalira said urgently, standing up. They're already here. Alex nodded, grabbing his rifle and checking his traps. His heart pounded in his chest, but he felt a strange sense of purpose. He wasn't just protecting a stranger anymore. He was protecting the future. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. The day was eerily quiet, a sharp contrast to the chaos that had erupted the night before. The mercenaries were gone, at least for now, but the air still felt thick with tension. Alex and Kalira were holed up in the farmhouse, trying to regroup and figure out their next move. Alex glanced at the mess around them. Broken furniture, shattered windows, and scorch marks from the traps they had set. It was a war zone inside, but outside, the world seemed peaceful. The storm had passed, and the sun shone through the trees, casting long shadows across the yard. It almost felt like everything was going to be okay. Almost. Kalira was sitting by the fire, her face unreadable as she stared into the flames. Her glowing tattoos flickered with every shift of light, but her thoughts were far from the present. Alex had seen that look before, the one that said someone was carrying a heavy burden. She hadn't spoken much about her past, but he knew enough now to understand that her life was anything but simple. You know, you don't have to do this, Alex said, breaking the silence. He sat across from her, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. You could still leave. You don't have to drag me into your war. Kalira's eyes flickered up to meet his. You think I haven't thought about that? Every second of the day, I think about how I could leave you out of this, but I can't. You've already helped me. You've already made this your fight, whether you realize it or not. Alex didn't respond right away. He didn't have a good answer. He had already crossed the point of no return. Helping Kalira had gone beyond just a matter of kindness. It was survival now. His survival, her survival, and possibly the survival of a lot more people than he cared to think about. Kalira sighed, rubbing her temples. I never wanted to drag anyone else into this, but I can't go back now. I have to stop them. Stop who? Alex asked, leaning forward. You keep mentioning them, but you've never really told me who they are. You said something about an artifact. Is that what they want? Kalira's face tightened, her eyes darkening. It's not just the artifact. It's everything it represents. If the wrong hands get hold of it, entire civilizations could be wiped out in the blink of an eye. It's power, untold power. And my people, my own people, want to use it to rule, to enslave. Then why don't you just go and destroy it? If it's that dangerous, just get rid of it, Alex suggested. Kalira's expression softened, but her eyes were full of sorrow. I wish it were that easy, but the artifact is hidden. Only I know where it is, and there's no way I can destroy it without ensuring my enemies don't get their hands on it first. It's too late for that. I have to stop them. Alex nodded slowly. He understood now. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting innocent lives from something that could destroy everything. And Kalira wasn't the kind of person to just walk away from a responsibility like that. I don't know what you're planning, Alex said, but I'm with you. Whatever happens next, I'll be right here. Kalira met his gaze again, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and guilt. I never expected this from you, human. You've shown me that there's something about your kind I don't understand. You fight for others, even when there's nothing in it for you. Alex shrugged. We're not so different, you and I. We both fight for what we believe in. Kalira remained silent, her expression unreadable. The quiet between them lingered, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the calm before the storm. And both of them knew that it wouldn't last long. The stillness of the morning shattered as the sound of engines roared in the distance. Alex's heart skipped a beat. They had no more time. The mercenaries were back, and this time they had come prepared. Kalira was already on her feet, her glowing tattoos pulsing with a renewed intensity as she scanned the horizon. They're not playing around anymore, she said quietly. They've come in force. Alex didn't need any more details. He had heard the engines too. It was time to face whatever came next. We're going to have to hold them off, Alex said, tightening his grip on his rifle. There's no way around it. Kalira nodded, but her face was grim. This won't be easy. They'll have advanced technology and better armor. We can't fight them head-on, but we can make them think we're stronger than we are. Alex quickly ran over their plan in his mind. They'd set more traps, prepare the house as best they could, and hope it would be enough. They had no backup, no reinforcements, just the two of them and their wits. We need to split up, Alex said. I'll cover the back, and you take the front. Keep them distracted. If we're lucky, we'll force them to retreat. Kalira met his eyes. And if we're not lucky? We don't have a choice, Alex said, his voice steady. We stand and fight. There was a brief moment of silence between them. Kalira nodded once, a quiet respect passing between them. She might be a skilled warrior from another galaxy, but here, in this fight, they were equals. Without another word, they moved into position. Alex crept around the side of the house, checking the traps they had set the day before. His pulse quickened as he saw the mercenaries' vehicles drawing closer, their dark forms creeping through the trees like shadows. Kalira stood just inside the front door, her weapon ready. She could hear their footsteps now, the crackling of the underbrush as they advanced. She felt her muscles tense, every fiber of her being ready for battle. But this wasn't just a battle to survive. It was a fight for everything she believed in. The first mercenary appeared in her sights, a tall figure with a glowing visor. He moved cautiously, his hand reaching for his weapon, unaware of the trap Kalira had set. With a swift motion, she stepped forward, knocking his gun out of his hand and sending him crashing to the ground with a precise strike. Behind her, Alex fired from the window, hitting another mercenary who was trying to sneak up from behind. The shot sent the enemy stumbling, and Kalira was on him in an instant, using her combat skills to disable him with ease. But they weren't done. More mercenaries poured out of the trees, their weapons raised. The odds were shifting in their favor for a moment, but Kalira knew this wasn't over yet. She was fast, but they had numbers and technology that she couldn't match in her current state. Alex grabbed a few more supplies from the house, a couple of grenades, and threw them toward the advancing enemies. The explosion was deafening, sending several of them flying backward, but the others quickly recovered. "We need to get to the barn," Alex shouted, running toward Kalira. "It's our only chance." Kalira didn't hesitate. She followed him, darting between trees, narrowly avoiding another burst of gunfire. They made it to the barn door, slamming it shut just as the mercenaries closed in on them. Panting, Alex turned to her. "I don't know how long we can keep this up." "We don't have a choice," Kalira replied, her voice grim. "We fight until the end." And with that, they prepared for the final stand. The barn was quiet for a moment, but only for a moment. Alex and Kalira stood side by side, catching their breath. The sound of mercenary boots hitting the ground grew louder outside, and the faint hum of their advanced technology made Alex's heart race. "They're getting closer," Alex muttered, looking out through the small crack in the barn's door. Kalira's glowing eyes narrowed, her warrior instincts still sharp despite her exhaustion. "They'll try to force us out, but they won't get what they want." Alex wasn't sure what she meant by that, but he didn't have time to question it. They needed to come up with something, fast. The barn wasn't exactly built to withstand an alien assault. "Do you have any more tricks up your sleeve?" Alex asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Kalira glanced at the barn's wooden walls and shook her head. "Not many, but I do have one thing left. Anything at this point will help," Alex said, a hint of desperation in his voice. Kalira pulled something small and metallic from her belt, a tiny device, no larger than a coin. She held it up between them. "This is a signal jammer. It can block their communication systems for a while, but it won't last long." Alex's eyes widened. "How long?" "Long enough to make a move," she replied. "We don't have much time before they notice the interference." Without another word, Alex moved to the back of the barn and started securing the door with some loose wood and nails. They had to delay the mercenaries as much as possible. Kalira positioned herself at the front, her weapon ready. The seconds felt like hours as they waited in tense silence. Outside, the mercenaries were getting closer, their voices echoing faintly through the walls. Kalira gripped her weapon tighter, her mind racing through possible strategies. She had fought in countless battles, but this was different. Here, on Earth, with Alex, it felt personal. "I'm not leaving you behind, human," she whispered under her breath. "I owe you more than you'll ever know." Suddenly, the door of the barn was slammed open. The mercenaries had arrived. But just as they stepped forward, the signal jammer activated. The mercenaries' communication devices went silent. They froze for a split second, disoriented. That was all the time Alex and Kalira needed. Alex threw a couple of homemade flashbangs into the middle of the group, temporarily blinding the mercenaries. Kalira took advantage of the distraction, moving swiftly and silently through the chaos. In seconds, she incapacitated two of the mercenaries with precise, targeted strikes, her glowing tattoos lighting up in the dim barn. The remaining mercenaries were starting to recover, but Alex and Kalira weren't backing down. With the jammer still in place, their enemies couldn't call for reinforcements. The battle was quick but intense. Alex fought with the raw determination of someone protecting everything they cared about, while Kalira moved like a seasoned warrior, her strikes quick and efficient. Together, they managed to bring down the last of the mercenaries, leaving the barn eerily silent once again. Breathing heavily, Alex looked over at Kalira. She was covered in dirt and blood, but she had a small smile on her face. "You did it," she said quietly. "We did it," Alex replied. He couldn't believe it. Against all odds, they had won. Kalira turned to him, her expression softening. "You've done more for me than I ever expected. You saved my life, human, and for that, I owe you everything." Alex shook his head. "I didn't do it for anything in return. I did it because it was the right thing to do." Kalira's smile grew. "You've proven that there's something extraordinary about humans. Not just your strength, but your heart. I will never forget this." Alex looked at her, realizing how much she had come to mean to him. It wasn't just the fight. They had formed a bond that went beyond what either of them had expected when they first met. "You don't have to repay me," he said softly. "Just stay safe. That's all that matters." Kalira nodded, her eyes full of gratitude. "I will. And I'll make sure the galaxy remembers the humans who helped me." With that, the two stood side by side, knowing that their fight was over, for now. But they would never forget the bond they had formed, or the battle they had fought together. The barn stood in silence after the battle, the sounds of distant nature slowly creeping back into the space. Alex and Kalira were both covered in dirt and sweat, their bodies bruised but their spirits unbroken. They had survived, against all odds. But there was a tension in the air now, one that neither of them could ignore. Alex sat on a stack of hay, wiping the dirt from his hands. His mind was racing, but for once, there was no immediate danger. Kalira, on the other hand, was standing by the barn door, looking out at the horizon. Her glowing tattoos had dimmed slightly, but her posture remained tense, as if she was waiting for something, or someone, to come for her. "Is it over?" Alex asked, breaking the silence. "Are they gone for good?" Kalira didn't immediately turn to answer. Her eyes were fixed on the distant trees, the memories of her enemy's pursuit still fresh in her mind. "They're gone for now," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "But I can't stay here. I've already put you in enough danger." Alex looked up at her, confusion and something else. Maybe fear, clouding his thoughts. "What do you mean? I thought we just won." "We did," Kalira said, her eyes softening as she finally turned to face him. "But this isn't over. I need to go back to my people, to clear my name and stop them from using the artifact." Alex stood up, shaking his head. "You can't go back alone. Not after everything we've been through. You'll need help. You still have enemies out there." Kalira's gaze softened, and for a moment, she seemed almost human in her vulnerability. "I know you want to help, and I can never thank you enough for everything you've done. But this isn't your fight. I've already dragged you into something far too dangerous." Alex stepped closer, determination hardening in his chest. "It's my fight now. You saved me, Kalira. You saved my life. I'm not going to let you face this alone. We can find a way to end this together." Kalira's eyes shimmered with gratitude, but also with an indescribable sadness. "I wish I could stay. You've shown me more kindness than I ever thought a human could, but I can't ask you to risk everything for me." He stared at her, his heart heavy. "Then don't ask me. Let me choose. We've already been through so much. I'm not letting you walk away." There was a long silence as Kalira studied him. The weight of their shared experiences hung between them, and Alex could see the conflict in her eyes. Finally, she nodded slowly, a mixture of relief and sorrow on her face. "You're right," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've already chosen, and I won't ask you to turn back now." The two stood there for a long moment, neither of them knowing exactly what came next. Kalira had always thought she would be alone in her fight, but now, in a world far from her own, she had found something unexpected. A companion, a partner, and perhaps a friend. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the farm. Kalira turned back to the barn door, her shoulders straight. "We leave tomorrow," she said quietly. "It's time to finish what we started." Alex nodded, a sense of calm settling over him. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready for whatever came next. Together, they had faced the impossible, and together, they would finish it. The next morning came quietly, the soft light of dawn filtering through the trees, casting long shadows over the barn. Alex stood outside, looking at the place that had sheltered him and Kalira through the worst of the battle. The air was crisp, and everything seemed still, almost as if the world was holding its breath. Kalira had spent the night preparing. She gathered what little she had, checking her equipment one last time. Her weapons were mostly destroyed, but she had enough to make do. Alex could see the quiet determination in her eyes, but also the weight of what she had to do. The road ahead was uncertain, and she was preparing to leave, knowing it could be dangerous. Alex approached her slowly, trying to find the right words. "Are you sure you're ready?" he asked quietly. His voice was filled with a mixture of concern and something deeper, something he hadn't fully understood until now. Kalira turned to him, offering a small smile. "I have no choice," she said simply, "but I'm not leaving without you." Alex was silent for a moment, taking in the reality of her words. The bond they had forged was real, and now it was pulling him into something far bigger than himself. He had never imagined his life would lead him down this path, but now, standing next to Kalira, he knew he couldn't turn away. "I'm with you," Alex said, his voice steady. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." Kalira's smile widened slightly, a flicker of warmth in her eyes. "You are braver than you realize, human." They walked together toward the edge of the property, the sun rising higher in the sky. Alex felt the weight of their journey pressing down on him. He had given his word, and now he was fully committed to the cause. The world outside the farm had been more dangerous than he could have imagined, but with Kalira by his side, he felt like he could face anything. As they reached the edge of the woods, Kalira paused and turned to him one last time. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice quieter now, filled with a mix of sincerity and gratitude. "You've done more for me than anyone ever could. I came to your world as an alien, a stranger. But now, because of you, I have something I've never had before." "What's that?" Alex asked, his heart racing slightly. Kalira's eyes softened. "Hope." Alex felt a pang in his chest. He had never realized just how much a simple act of kindness could mean. He had only done what seemed right, what any decent person would do. But in doing so, he had changed the course of Kalira's life, and perhaps the fate of her people. "We should go," Kalira said, turning toward the path ahead. "The sooner we get to the artifact, the sooner we can stop them." Alex nodded and walked beside her, the two of them moving as one. They had been through so much already, and now they had a new mission. The danger wasn't over, but together, they would face whatever came next. As they disappeared into the trees, Alex took one last look at the farm behind them. It had been the start of everything, the place where his quiet life had been shattered. But it was also the place where he had found his purpose, his strength, and his unexpected bond with an alien warrior. And now, their journey would continue. Together, they would fight for the future.